In this video, I'll show you three things. First, you'll see why the average employee is worse off today than they were in 2019. Second, how the government planned to give more tax cuts to people, but then backed off. And finally, how the Chancellor isn't quite telling you the full story. So let's dive in. This is what the UK Chancellor said to the BBC in March 2024 regarding whether people are paying more taxes than before.
Let's look at the numbers, because in 5 years' time, tax receipts will be up by £20 billion, even accounting for your cuts in national insurance. So people are being clobbered, aren't they? For all of this talk of tax cuts, that's baloney. People are paying more.
Well, one of the reasons that tax receipts are higher is because the economy is set to get back to more growth.
And it's also because the thresholds for paying various rates of tax are frozen as people's incomes are rising. They're paying more.
Yes, but even if you take account of the thresholds, what you will see next year is a big cut in taxation for families earning the average income. It's a significant cut, and what we're saying is, look, there was a one-off. We had a pandemic, it was right to help families through the pandemic. Now we're through that, now the economy is growing, now we've got inflation down according to our plan, we want to bring taxes down, and we made a decisive step towards that today.
By the end of this video, you'll see why this isn't quite true. In the last 5 years, we've had a pandemic, an ongoing war in Eastern Europe, and a cost of living crisis, all of which combined to bring down the economy. Now, there are signs of recovery, which is good news, but that does not mean things are getting better. And people have felt this impact. What you're looking at is the median salary from 2012 to 2023 from the ONS. In the tax year April 2019 to April 2020, the median salary was £30,456. Over the next 3 years, it rose to £35,448. Now, this is gross income before tax. What you really want is the amount left after tax, which is also known as disposable income. And according to my calculator, this is what the results look like. Small caveat here, the actual national insurance might be slightly different in 2022 and 2023 due to the mini budgets. My code works for all tax years, and these mid-year changes are not accounted for. And I will explain why this is a bit annoying. Typically in the UK, the tax year runs from the 6th of April to the 5th of April next year. A well-organized policy means changes usually apply at the beginning of each year. That makes things easier for everyone. Somehow, some people, for some reason, decided to have a mini budget in September 2022 to make changes to the national insurance with effect from November 2022. These changes were cancelled at the beginning of the next tax year, that is April 2023. These people were also cancelled as a result. You'd think the next people in power would learn from it, but no, they also had a mini budget where they implemented national insurance changes with effect from 6th of January 2024 to the 5th of April 2024. Now, it's a mess to say the least. Anyway, looking at the results, you can see that the total income has risen, and as a result, the take-home pay, that is the amount one actually receives, has increased. That's almost 4k increase in take-home pay over 4 years. However, we need to account for inflation here, and again, using the ONS figures, that 28k is actually equal to £23,476 in 2020's money. This means that the median salary in 2023 was, yes, lower than in 2020. That might explain why some people struggle with living costs despite a rise in their nominal income. But that's not the full story. Part of the reason why people don't have enough left at the end of the month is also partly due to taxation. Under the UK taxation system, most residents have a personal allowance, which is a threshold under which they don't pay any tax. In 2019, the personal allowance was £11,850, and the following year it rose to £12,500 and remained the same in the following year. and that was in line with the proposed policy document published on the 29th of October 2018, shown here. The link is in the description. The plan was to increase the personal allowance to $12,500 for 2019 and 2020, and they did. But look what comes next. From 2021 to 2022 onwards, the personal allowance and basic rate limit will be indexed with the Consumer Price Index (CPI). And if you scroll further down, this was the planned increase in personal allowance. Under this policy, our personal allowance should have been $13,310, but this never happened. Since 2022, the personal allowance was frozen at £12,570, and to make matters worse, the government has confirmed this would be frozen until April 2028. Yes, 2028. As people's earnings increase to keep up with inflation, the thresholds remain frozen, meaning people will pay more tax. At this rate, there's a good chance that the state pension will exceed the personal allowance. To be fair, that's partly because the state pension is raised by the highest of three things: 2.5% or inflation rate or earnings growth rate. This is what is referred to as the triple lock. Now, inflation and the frozen personal allowance affects the lowest earners the hardest, which is why I focus on them in this video. But there are other changes which took place over the past few years but probably affect the middle class more. For example, the capital gains allowance, that is the amount exempt from capital gains tax, has been reduced from £12,300 in 2023 to £6,000 in 2024, and that will drop further to £3,000 in 2025. Similarly, the dividends allowance will be reduced from £2,000 to £1,000 to £500 over the same period. So people need to be careful of these two forms of taxes if their investments are not held in an ISA or pension. Now remember, the Chancellor said that tax receipts are higher because the economy is set to grow. I think that's a bit misleading because the tax burden is clearly higher than before. Now, I do understand we have to reduce the budget deficit and we've had a pandemic, which means increased spending. But with the high inflation rates and interest rates, this comes at a high cost. Anyway, to sum up, you can see how the average employee is worse off today than they were in 2019, and also that personal allowance never increased as planned. And finally, I'm not sure I'd say the Chancellor is telling you the full story here. But what's your experience? Have you had a salary increase and has it made a meaningful difference to your budget? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you for watching and see you next time.